Animals are also a part of the habitat we live in, and it's important that we realize the need to conserve them. Welcome back to Sustainable Living with Shilpa Reddy, powered by Planet Green's Farm Natura, a new beginning to your life. Today, on yet another episode of Coco Works Sustainable Star, I have with me a woman of substance and yet one who is unfazed by accolades and laurels. She is committed for the welfare of others and walks the talk and is also a part of many welfare organizations. Serene and tranquil with a pleasant smile on her face and a cheerful demeanor, she is an achiever as she continues to work tirelessly to make the world a better place for us and for the animals. Let's welcome my dear friend, mentor, and someone who inspires me constantly, Amala Akkineni. A very warm welcome to you, Amala. I'm super happy, honored that you're on my show. Honestly, you must believe me when I say my show would have been incomplete without you being on it. I want people to know the kind of impact and influence you have had on my life to become the person I am today, to a point that Amla is like my subconscious voice who sometimes corrects me when I'm faltering or guides me. I met you when I was 22 and I used to be amused by the kind of stories you would tell me about the work you did, about animals, about just generally all your stories to amuse me. And thank you for being a great friend, a mentor and a guiding star. Welcome.
Oh my, Shilpa, I'm tearing up.
I'm tearing up too while saying it. It's really, really emotional moment for me.
Well, thank you for making me feel so welcome. And congratulations on this fabulous, fabulous initiative.
Thank you, Amla. So, Amla, I want to start by asking you, sustainable living has been your way of life for many, many years. From the time I know you, that is like 18 plus years. And now people started talking or even mentioning sustainability. So was this instilled in you since childhood, or is it your wisdom that guides you to do this way?
It's a beautiful question, Shilpa. If you go back a few hundred years, every human being had to live like that.
Right.
You know, so
Yes.
it was the way of life. If you see your parents and your grandparents, I'm sure they would explain to you the way they had to live to respect the resources around them, to respect the situation around them. My mother grew up in World War II, post-World War II times in Ireland. My father grew up in post-partition India. So they all had to live sustainably. There wasn't much available anyway. In a time of scarcity, sustainability was the only way to survive.
Right.
When I moved to Chennai, I studied in Chennai most of my life, and I moved there as a little girl of about 8 years old. And Chennai was already facing a terrible water shortage.
Oh, even then?
Oh yes.
Okay, I didn't know.
All the wells in Chennai had gone brackish. The water had gone brackish. And you see, the sea comes in and all the wells go brackish, right? If the groundwater goes down, the levels go down, automatically it's filled up with seawater.
Right.
So most coastal towns, if the population explodes, the local water source is not able to sustain.
Right.
This is long before the Kaveri battles began.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so at that time, as young children, we were taught how can you manage with one bucket of water
The whole day?
the whole day.
Oh.
So all the hostel girls, we were in part of our requirement to come to hostel, you had to bring a bucket and a mug. So that bucket you lined up, you were given one bucket of water, and we were taught to have a bath, to use the toilet, to wash our clothes, to wash our dishes, and to manage the whole day with one bucket of water. After a year or two of this practice, you begin to respect and treat that water so carefully.
Correct. Yeah.
So I even learned, I had very long hair at the time, long hair in a plait. I even learned how to first dunk my hair in the water, then wash it, then bathe, so that I could save, so it's not wasted on just washing the hair. Yeah.
Okay.
And so we all learn tricks on conserving water. There is no better way in life to learn to conserve other than scarcity. In a time of plenty, if you say don't waste, there's no value to it,
Right.
right?
Correct. Yes.
It has to be a time of scarcity. So let me pause here and say that every challenging time in the history of humanity has taught humanity to conserve, to respect the resources. It isn't anything new that I learned.
Okay.
It was through scarcity that I learned sustainability. Right? And it comes from a deep respect and gratitude
To the resource.
to the
towards
resource,
resources.
yes.
Okay.
And I really believe that all life originates from the availability of water. So before anything else, if we learn to conserve and respect and replenish our water, life would be much better on this planet for everybody, not just for us.
Right. Yes, of course. I heard you speak very fondly about your mother. What kind of impact did she have on you to become the person you are today?
My mother is amazing. I suppose,
She is.
yeah, she always had her nose buried in a book, or she was always cooking, because we were three of us always ravenously hungry. There were never any snacks at home, so we survived with 3 meals and plenty of upmas and halwas in the middle, or peanut butter sandwiches. And I even remember her cooking with a book.
Oh, really?
She'd be cooking and reading both at the same time. So that was my mother. Her stories were all about the challenging times in Ireland after World War II, and how so many German U-boats escaping the war would land on the shores of Ireland full of German men, women and children
Okay.
running away from the war zone, and how the Irish embraced them and took them in. So they were very
These were running
fascinating.
away from not wanting to go to the war.
Yeah. So you know how it is. A country may, like Germany had declared war on the rest of the world in Hitler's Germany, but doesn't mean that every German believed in it.
Correct.
But they were persecuted if they didn't participate in the
forced,
war,
correct,
right? If
yes.
they didn't
Right.
go against the Jews, and if they didn't support all that, the Holocaust. So many of them ran away and came to Ireland.
Okay.
Yes, and the U-boats landed on the shores of Ireland, and so we had fascinating stories of my mother's growing up years. She also read to us every night The Lord of the Rings. It's an Irish fairy tale.
Okay.
Yeah, J.R. Tolkien is an Irish author, and
Okay.
long before it was made into the movie.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yeah, it was an Irish
fairy tale.
And she would read it to us, because I was very small, I couldn't read it myself. And every night our imagination used to go wild, and what Gollum looked like, and what these mystical creatures looked like. And yeah, it was lovely. Voice of America, we had a little radio and we would listen to Voice of America or BBC at the time, and I think it was the Indo-China War when I was very small in Kharagpur, and the Air Force planes used to be going over
Oh.
on their way to the borders. So we traveled a lot. Every holiday was throw your backpack into the car, and we had this little Volkswagen, and Dad and Mom would take turns to drive, and we drove all across the country.
Okay. So your reading comes from your mom?
Reading comes from Mom. The most exciting gift I could get was for my birthday or for Christmas or for any occasion, it would be a stack of 5 books.
Oh, wow.
Oh boy, it was so exciting that I couldn't wait to get under the covers and read. Yeah, so Mom influenced to the extent of opening our minds to everything that the human race is capable of, to understand and,
Wow.
at least understand it. Yeah,
The scope.
the scope.
Wow.
So if I can say a couple of things about my mom, being Irish, she was used to doing all the work at home herself. You see, they don't have domestic staff.
Help, huh.
Yeah. She grew up on a farm. They all worked on the farm. They pitched in on the farm, and her dad was a doctor.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So we all did our own work. So we cleaned our own rooms. She did the cooking. We all helped her washing up, and that's how we grew up in the naval apartment that my dad had as accommodation. We also had little posters or signs in our toilet which said, Gandhiji cleaned his own toilet, so can you.
Oh.
So
Okay.
at a very young age, we all learned to clean our own toilet. So I think she taught me about the dignity of human labor,
Okay.
and that never look down
On any kind
on any kind of labor, take dignity in doing your own work. And yeah, so that was something that deeply ingrained.
Wow.
I'm also very grateful to my mom that when I rescued my first animal, she didn't say no. She
Okay.
didn't say, oh, dirty creature, don't bring it in, although it was covered in fleas and mangy and stinking. But I was like determined I was going to help this creature, and she showed me how to take care of it, and
Wow.
let me keep it in a little storeroom she had, and I'm so grateful to her.
And I
So
also
grateful.
remember she stood up for, I remember you mentioning that there was this neighbor and that the girl was not treated right and she brought her home and kept her with her. That story really had a huge impact on me, because I think those are the things when you grow up with, you stand up and you become the voice when
Yeah.
it's needed, not just shy away.
Yeah. Fearless she is.
Yeah.
She'll stop the car in the middle of the road, or she will walk into the neighbor's apartment and she will stand up for, I suppose,
Wow.
yeah, fearless.
Yeah. So Amla, you are an animal crusader. Not just caring for animals, at Blue Cross, I remember you mentioning that you brought in a lot of sustainable practices, eco-friendly practices, and now that impact also you explained to me. Can you please share all that with us?
For the majority of the world, Shilpa, sustainable practices means that you can survive.
Okay.
That you can stretch each rupee that you spend to the maximum benefit.
Right. Wow,
Yeah.
so lovely that the way you said it.
That you can make whatever you have available in your surrounding and your possession to serve the maximum value to the maximum number. So in the crux of it, sustainable means that.
Right.
So when we say this project isn't sustainable or this activity is not sustainable, it means it's wasteful.
Right.
It's wasteful, it's not creating value for anyone. It's losing instead of winning.
Okay.
So
yes.
win-win is the mantra of sustainable, right? When we announced Blue Cross of Hyderabad and we chose the name Blue Cross because it means veterinary service, right?
Right.
If you see a Blue Cross, or you know
Yeah,
there's a vet,
vet,
available. So that was the intention. We said, look, there are no veterinary services other than in the government hospitals for people who take the animal there.
Right.
There's no service for helpless animals,
Right.
so let's start the Blue Cross. And at that point, so many wonderful people came to join me. They would just arrive and say, I'm so and so, I'm so happy you're doing this work, I'm here to help you.
Okay.
Like you were sharing earlier, you're meeting all these
Right.
wonderful people. They would find me out and travel. Some would travel from different cities, some
Wow.
would travel from across the city. They would come and find me and tell me that they were available to serve. And one of them was the PCCF. He was a retired PCCF Principal Chief Conservator Forest of the state.
Okay.
And Mr. R.K. Rao. And he came, and so he served as our honorary president for the longest time.
Okay.
And we were given this little piece of land, which is
Yeah.
Blue Cross now.
Now.
And it was this completely quarried, jagged bit of empty space
Okay.
around this massive mountain of rock.
Okay.
If you looked at it then, you'd say, what were you thinking, Amila? And I thought to myself, see, I can buy land, but the land I could afford is like, you know,
Far away?
yeah, 50, 60 kilometers outside the city, and to take one injured animal all that time is the petrol spent, the time, the animal will be dead by the time it reaches there. It was totally unsustainable to think of that. So I said, I need a small place as a stopgap, and I need it somewhere very close to the city. So this is all that I could find.
Right.
Nobody wanted it because it was all this rubble and stone and this
Oh, that
massive
piece of
mountain.
land.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Mr. R.K. Rao very nicely told me, and of course architect Shankar Narayan, he is also sustainable living is his mantra as well. So they gave me little pieces of leveled out, filled with earth and packed with a few of the local whatever stone was available, and Mr. R.K. Rao planted the trees because he was the forester
Yeah.
in the group. And so we moved from water being the source of our life to next vegetation. That the purpose of trees and all the
Right.
tree planting done there. Of course, you know that Nag also has planted
Millions.
billions of trees.
Right.
And he has a strong passion for trees, and for
Correct.
him a grove of trees is more important than anything else. And R.K. Rao sir taught me that how to plant it in the middle of rock and how to plant it where you don't have any facility to water it,
Oh.
so that it will survive the first 3 years,
Okay.
and after the first 3 years it looks after itself.
Okay.
And then we noticed that it started protecting, it was holding the earth. Most of the soil erosion happens because the trees,
No plants.
yeah, they don't, the root systems
Right.
hold the earth together. And then the bore wells started recharging because they were harvesting the water for
Water.
us.
Okay.
And then the temperature came down by at least 5 degrees because these massive trees covered the entire place.
Wow.
And then Blue Cross took on the look of what it is today. So in 20 years that it's been there, it's transformed from this jagged, quarried, barren rock into this beautiful sanctuary for animals.
Right.
And it's a step-by-step process. Water, plantation.
So Amla, your father is a Bengali, mom Irish, and I'm sure they're not grown up, or they don't have a vegetarian eating style. But once you mentioned when you were a child, you couldn't eat anything but vegetarian, and your body would reject it. And you turned vegan many years ago when no one even knew what veganism was, in Hyderabad at least. And it wasn't easy. I remember, you would absolutely have no choices when you went out, and it was a difficult journey. But having said that, not everyone can turn vegan, but I want you to coin a change that most of them can, make to have a considerable impact on the environment. What can they do?
Well, any meal you choose to abstain from eating a living creature will have its impact.
Right.
So I think one step at a time. I know most of the animal welfare world recommends vegetarian Mondays
Right.
or vegan Tuesdays.
Okay.
Oh, I mean, even so many of the spiritual practices,
Correct.
they tell you, oh, Wednesday is Baba's day, or Thursday is Baba's day, and no eating non-veg,
Non-veg.
no drinking alcohol.
Correct.
These are abstinence practices. So any practice of abstinence will help.
Okay.
It will help you internally, mentally, physically, as well as it will help the environment.
Absolutely.
I think one step at a
time. Okay. So, what is your thought on the need for green energy in current situation globally?
Energy solutions, I mean, I have so many friends working for sustainable energy. And I think now with the 17 UN development goals,
Okay.
Energy links up to poverty alleviation as well as environmental protection, right? Most of us who have electricity, we take it for granted, but there is still a very large number of the population, a huge section of the population who still doesn't have electricity.
Right.
And I'm sure if you ask your grandparents, like I hear stories of my father, when him and his brothers and sisters, they studied under the street light.
Yeah, there are many such stories, yes.
And it is real. I mean, even now when I sit with my father and he tells me stories of his growing up, he said we were 11 children and we would study under the street light.
Right.
And yeah, so it's hard to understand the need of people below who don't have it, and their struggle to survive and to do well in life. There's so much at a disadvantage.
Right.
Right? And so the first responsibility of any government is, and any society, is to first support those who don't have it, make sure everybody has the basic needs, and the 17 goals of the UN development needs basically address the basic requirements of human structure to support people to be able to do well in life, to survive and thrive. With energy, the more you think of what you want instead of what you need, the more unsustainable it gets.
Amla, recently you went to a village and you were horrified to see the sewage situation right in front of a school, and what you did there was commendable. Can you please narrate this story and tell us why you did what you did there?
Well, I went to my cook's village. He was getting married, so I'd taken the rest of our staff and we'd all gone together. And I was waiting because the wedding was a little delayed.
Okay.
And the sarpanch of the village came and said, please come and see the school. So I thought he was very proud to show the school, I'll go and check it out. We were waiting. So I went along. And as we were walking, the whole village gathered. And
Obviously.
I said, well, what was I thinking? And we walked along, and I noticed that all the open drains of the village, most villages still have open drains.
Correct.
They were being used as garbage dumps.
Oh,
So when a drain is filled with plastic, first of all it gets choked.
right.
and stagnant water begins to stink. The
Right.
stench is just unbelievable.
Okay. Yeah.
So then the gravity of the situation dawned on me as I was walking.
Mm.
You know, I'm a die-hard optimist. I keep, anyway, never mind. I walk along and we see the school. Well, first there are two schools. One is the main school for the older children, and one is the little Anganwadi center
For the
up
younger.
yeah, they're
lot.
across the road
Okay.
from each other, and both the drains are filled with plastic, and the stench is horrendous.
Mm.
And I see these little children sitting in the Anganwadi center, and they have to cross steps over this dangerous health hazard of a drain,
Right.
and everybody is blank. What I'm seeing and what I'm experiencing, nobody else does.
Mm.
And I realize, okay, they've just gotten so used to it.
Mm.
So I asked the sarpanch, ఏంటండి ఇది
Mm.
ఇంత ఘోరంగా ఉంది? So he said, budget లేదు ma'am.
Budget లేదు. Okay.
Mm. So I realized, okay, it hasn't even struck them that they can help themselves.
Okay.
So I said, we must show an example.
Mm.
And I think an example is far more powerful than any lecture, speech, or donation.
Right.
Yeah. So I was wearing
Sorry, I'm assuming.
a slightly grand sari because it wasn't my
Wedding.
daily cotton.
It
I'd
was-
gone for a wedding.
Yes.
So I took my sari, tucked it, lifted it up, and I looked to the right. There was a store, and to the left there was a lady sitting on her doorstep. And I said, "Cheap rundandi."
Jadu.
I wanted a jadu, right? So I got the two jadus. I needed two because it was so dirty. And I just started scooping out the plastic from
the sewage. The open drain.
Yeah. And within about 5 minutes, I had cleared this side.
Wow.
And then I went to the other side. By the time I did that, about 4 or 5 men, and all the Nagarjuna fans, by the way, all of them had gotten brooms
And started
and they were doing
doing
it.
it. Wow.
And we scooped out all the plastic from the drains, and I even got a sanchi, and we started filling all
Filling.
that plastic into the sanchi, and you move that sewage along, and if there's no plastic, of course,
It will
the drain
flow.
clears.
Correct.
So it was great. In 5 to 10 minutes, we'd cleared the drains by the village.
Wow.
I mean, by the two schools. And all the important people there were quite embarrassed. And I think by an example, we proved that you can help yourself. You don't have to wait for somebody to give you a budget to clean your drain.
Right.
Yeah, so I didn't mean to create a stir,
Right.
but I realized I needed to do something to.
Wow. This is
To
such
help
an
the kids.
inspiring story, and I've told this to so many of them.
You would have done it too, Shilpa.
You think so? Maybe, I don't know. It was so horrifying then, and especially children, little children.
Yeah, I think the mother in
Mother,
you
yeah, when it
wakes
comes
up and
to
say,
children,
no,
I
no,
think,
no, no,
yeah.
no, no, no. Wait a
So you
minute.
have also spoken about sanitation, Amla. So what change, how can we implement that seed of change in the rural India? Only by example, or the locals should take up something to improve the sanitation?
Well, as long as we think somebody else is going to do it for us, there's going to be an issue.
Right.
And I think that I started with that saying, Gandhiji cleaned his own toilet,
Toilet.
so can you?
Right.
That really deeply impacted me, that if there's
Okay.
something so filthy, I'm not going to ask somebody else to clean it.
Right.
I'm going to clean it myself.
Right.
And when we started Blue Cross, the first activity I would do was clean the kennels, clean the cowshed, clean the cattery. I mean, unless you're willing to do that level of work, how can you talk sanitation,
Correct.
right?
Wow.
Yeah, you got. I really wish I had the answer, Shilpa. But
No,
I
but
think
I
we need
think
to ingrain that, you know, we need to do our own work,
yeah.
stop waiting for somebody else to do
come
it.
and do it for you. Wow.
And yes, it's very laborious, hard work. I mean, you were talking about composting, natural farming. I mean, I've dabbled in natural farming because Nagarjuna's always owned some little piece of land that has water, and he's always said, can you look after it? Because he's always been so busy shooting, and I've tried to understand how do you do it without using chemicals and toxins, and you know, how do you look after the land. And I've had good friends and well-wishers teach me, but I know it's very hard work.
Yeah, farm work is...
It's back-breaking work. I know when I would get into the field and work with my labor, my farmers, by the time you're finished, I couldn't stand. You know, your back would be bent over and you couldn't stand, and your arms are covered with scratches, and your face is
bites.
peeling off because the sun is so strong. It is back-breaking work. So how do we do it? Yes, we need more machines that will help us, but machines that are, you know, well thought of.
Yeah, not over energy consuming machines again. Yes.
I think machines to make the work easier. A lot of technology.
Right.
If we can incorporate technology, it's just so much easier.
Right.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yes.
I think YouTube videos today are a
like
great
teaching
place.
tools.
Yeah.
Correct.
My dad has a farm in the mountains of Uttarakhand, in a little village way in the Himalayas, and all the villagers struggle there with the wildlife. All the animals come and eat. They destroy the crops. Every night they'll come and destroy the crops.
Right.
So I got them all smartphones so that they can source the YouTube videos where they can hear how other farmers across the mountains had managed to deter the animals. What crops to put, what crops, you know, to mix, what are the sacrificial crops that you put on the periphery, so the animals will just mess with those.
So they don't have any animal traps?
No, they're not allowed. They're very strict because it's the Himalayas, right? Yeah, you can't, They keep a lot of dogs. The dogs do protect them, but the panthers come and take the dogs away. The panthers come to eat the dogs. So farming is the most difficult of all jobs, and I think any menial task which needs the labor of the physical body is just so challenging. How do we make it more powerful with tools? And I think the Americas have proved that it's with tools that they have just taken over the world. We need more farm tools, we need more tools accessible to these people to make their life easier, to be more sustainable, to get the best out of their land.
So Amla, when you look at our food resources or water, there's pollutants everywhere now, and people are talking about at least consuming organic food. But again, having said that, it's not, I mean, not everyone can afford organic food. So do you, with your knowledge, with your experience on the farm, would you suggest every household to grow at least a part of their food, even if they have a small balcony, and is it doable?
I think Nag and Samantha have proved that, right?
Correct, yes.
The pandemic and the lockdown, I think, was one of the greatest teachers. Any family you talk to will say, right?
True. Yeah, it's like a blessing in disguise is what they say.
Exactly. We were forced to stop. We were forced to look within. We were forced to protect and preserve ourselves and rethink our lives. And suddenly we got all this time to realize we have enough.
Mm.
We have
have
enough
more than
and
enough.
more. Yeah.
More than enough, I know.
And Nag, in the pandemic, he just started growing vegetables in every nook and corner of the house because he was home.
Mm.
And of course, also the technology was available, right?
Right. Mm.
Hydroponics, which we've been talking about all this while, suddenly was available in the city. The consultants were there, they were able to set it up, they were able to teach them how to do it. All the sustainable urban farming
Kits, the
kits
home
were
kits were
available,
available, yes.
support systems were there, and this is what I meant, tools and technology to
Yes.
make these things easy and accessible.
Right.
Once that happens, today even putting a solar roof or putting a solar heater is easy.
Correct.
And what's even better is your solar, even if your house is not wired for solar, you can sell the power to the grid.
Okay.
So it goes directly into
Okay.
your meter, and the electricity department is buying it, and it
Okay.
gets deducted from your electricity bill. So
Oh,
nothing
wow.
is wasted. Not an
Okay.
inch of the house is wasted because there's vegetables growing everywhere. You have the power, we generate 20 kV power, green power on our roof, and that's going to the grid.
Okay.
We water harvest. Every single storm drain has this massive water harvesting pit below, along with a drum.
Okay.
So we're not only collecting the water, but harvesting the water below.
as well.
And I think every home does this. Every home I knew in Chennai used to do this.
Okay.
And I'm talking about the 80s, 70s,
Okay.
where we used to do this. And I'm sure if you go back another 100 years, they were doing this.
Right. You're right. All trenches and
Yeah.
harvesting, water
Yeah.
harvesting. Yes.
It's about knowing that you don't have money or resources to waste, and you've got to protect what we have and treasure what we have, because we're here to stay.
Yes. And we are here to conserve it for the future generations as well.
Absolutely. I'm still excited to learn what I want to do.
Correct. I know. Absolutely.
You have to instill that sense of wonder and adventure
Right.
and the joy of learning. If I tell you, oh Shilpa, you should meditate, who the hell she thinks she is telling me what to do?
Roses or lilies?
They're both so beautiful.
I know.
You pick.
Lilies, the fragrance is unbelievable for me. I love the fragrance of lilies.
Roses are healing.
Are they? Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, from centuries, rose water is
Yeah.
used. Yeah, so roses for you.
No,
Amber, then.
either. They're both beautiful.
I aspire to be at least 1/3 of what you are today.
I can say 100 things to 100 people, but only 1 in 100 actually listens and actually implements it.
Okay.
And you are one of those.
Thank you. I'm a good student then.
So it's an honor.